Hi, I'm David Weiss. Welcome to Screenplay by Moshe and me. We're going to talk a little bit about Torah ideas that have wound up in my work and other related subjects. Just a quick bio. I was raised as a young Reformed Jew. I wandered out into Christianity at age 15, 18, I guess, and for about 15 years did ministry and evangelism for the church and was doing filmmaking for the church, and then wandered slowly back to Judaism. And that peppered sort of my creative path, having taken that little detour. I'm a member of the Motion Picture Academy. I get to vote for the Oscars. I was the vice president of the Writers Guild of America during the strike. I just really like to put on a show. I stumbled onto that looking for meaning in life before I really understood what it was to be a real Jew, and I was just desperately looking for something to make life make more sense to me, and I never really found that until much later, but I did discover that while I was putting on a show, I felt just great, and so I pursued that for a while. The problem is when you're done with the show, you don't feel so great, and so you've got to find something more meaningful to carry you along, and eventually, thank God, I met a young Jewish guy in Ireland when I was working for Don Bluth, the animator, on a film called All Dogs Go to Heaven. And we started a conversation, actually brought him to my church youth group where I was the youth minister to talk about the Jewish holidays. And we started a conversation that goes to this day. He's now my neighbor in Los Angeles. And so that's my background. Okay, now I write movies and for families. And here's my water. This water, by the way, is a very important prop. It's a little tip for you all. I learned in film school that if you want to be successful, you have to know what you want. You have to be definitive. When you go to a meeting, you have to ask for what you want with confidence. So you don't say, when they say, hey, do you want something to drink? By the way, remind me if I start speaking too quickly. Someone said that I do speak kind of quickly. So they said, look, if you go to a meeting and they say, what would you like to drink? Don't say, what do you have? Say, I'll have a Diet Coke with ice. You know what you want. I'll have a coffee black. So I went to my first meeting, and a young lady at the desk said, would you like something to drink? And I said, I'll have water. And she said, do you want ice in that? And I said, no, room temperature. So she got up, and I said, but not this room. I want you to walk it down the hall. That first room was fantastic. Let it sit there for 3.5 minutes, and then bring it quickly down the hall, because I did not like the hall. And then hand it to me here, because this room is only so-so. And that woman was having a relationship with the producer, and she didn't think that was funny, and I did not get that job. So you don't want to be too confident with your beverages. That's my professional tip. So people frequently ask me, why don't you write something Jewish? And that's a great question. I was writing stuff for the church. The difference there was that the church has millions and millions and hundreds of millions of members, of paying members, so they can afford to pay people to write stuff for the church. And the Jews have 12 million people, half of which won't go to a movie. So it's tricky, But when I can, when it fits, I will put an idea in that I learned from a rabbi or at shul or in a book or in the Torah. I don't force it in because that would be propaganda. People are going to the movie to be entertained, and my employers at the studios are paying me to make sure that their box office is high. Is it 10 minutes only I got left now, Rabbi? It's just down to 5? Yeah, okay. People are not paying money to go and hear a sermon. They can get that at shul, and they frequently will sleep during that. And the studios don't want that. They want you to be wide awake and have a good time. So my first loyalty as a professional, in the same way that you don't want to hire a lawyer who, instead of defending your case, is busy teaching the judge about the laws of lost objects, right? You want, unless that's what the case is about. You want someone who's on message. So the first rule is to write a story that is fitting with the story that you're doing. But when you can, I want to do something that's meaningful. When I graduated from the USC School of Cinema Television, David Putnam, who had been a great producer in England, he produced a movie called The Chariots of Fire, which I loved as a young person. I know God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure. That movie was just amazing to me, that Vangelis score. Dun, da, 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 dee, da, 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 dee. Right? Wonderful movie. He became the head of Columbia Studios for a short and bizarre run where he was going to transform Hollywood into a place of morals and decency. And they threw him out within about a month, I think. But he came to my graduation and he spoke and he said, ladies and gentlemen, when you go into the theater, you have an awesome responsibility as a filmmaker because the audience sits down in this darkened room. It's a darkened room with a massive dream-sized image. Dream-sized images. And I thought about that we're taking ideas and we're putting them into the subconscious of our audience. So we have this responsibility. So when we can, we want to try and do something really meaningful. So happily, one of the first thing that I got to work on after I left the church, after doing Bible stories on video for church groups, the first show I got produced was the Rugrats Hanukkah special. And I don't know if anybody knows what the Rugrats are, but most of you know what Hanukkah is. And we got nominated for an Emmy for our work on the Rugrats. I work with a partner, J. David Stem, nice not Jewish guy, but so he can work on the days that I can't work. Because I'm the Jew that can work on Christmas and Easter and the Super Bowl, and he works on all the other days. So I'll work 24/6. He works 24/7. So we went to Nickelodeon and said, hey, we think the Rugrats need a Hanukkah special. The mom is Jewish, the kids are Jewish. That you've done a Christmas special. And they're like, we already did Passover, and we're going to do New Year's. We're like, New Year's? What the Rugrats are going to go out and bang pots and pans together?
I don't know if this is a good idea, Tom. We don't know what these pots have been.
It didn't resonate with us. So we said, how about Hanukkah? And they said, no, New Year's. So we work on the New Year's story, then we go to pitch all of our season ideas to the president of Nickelodeon, and the president is a nice Jewish guy, and he says, what's this about New Year's? That doesn't make any sense. What else have you got? And I said, well, how about Hanukkah? And he said, that's great, let's do Hanukkah. So we got to write the Hanukkah story. So what is it going to be about? So we basically worked out the whole plot, okay? And plot is basically just simple, this happens, then this happens, and this happens. But if you don't know what the story is about, then what you really just have is a series of events. To make it really into a story, there has to be a theme, and there has to be a heart, and there has to be emotion. You have to put something in there that causes the audience to lean forward and be moved. The great English author Ian Forster once said that plot, he may have switched plot and story, but plot is simply the king died, and then the queen died. All right, this happened, then that happened. Story is the king died, and then the queen died, of a broken heart. I hear them. Hear that? Right? And suddenly we're like, oh no, tell me more. That's story. There has to be a theme. So we had it all worked out. The Rugrats are going to the school, to the shul to see the Hanukkah play, and the senior citizens are doing the meaning of Hanukkah, but the Rugrats mistakenly think it's the meanie, like the bully, the mean guy of Hanukkah, and their grandfather, Boris, is playing the head of the Maccabees, and his rival for years, Shlomo, is the king of the Greeks. And so they think that the king of the Greeks is the meanie of Hanukkah. And he's going to be ganging up on Grandpa Boris, so we got to go protect our grandfather from the meanie of Hanukkah. And they have this all wrong. So Grandpa Boris is this wonderful Jewish actor who's basically channeling his uncle. And Shlomo is played by the late Fivish Finkel. I'm not sure if he's late. He's a wonderful Yiddish actor. And I had the great privilege to direct Fivish Finkel as Shlomo. And we get to this scene where these guys are fighting, and in the script, we know, okay, they're fighting, and then the Rugrats somehow bring these two old rivals together. And in doing the play, they will tell us the entire story of Hanukkah. What a great way to bring all this Judaism onto Nickelodeon for millions of American children to watch every year. I grew up on Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We're going to bring a reindeer, bringing Jewish programming to Nickelodeon. It's fantastic. So we had the story, the Rugrats bring these two old guys together. What we didn't have was, we had the plot, we didn't have the story. What's it about? And why are these guys fighting? So as a writer, what you do when you get stuck, one of these great tricks, and this isn't just for writing, this is for all of life. What you do is you go towards the pain. You look inside and you say, where is the wound? Because really the story is about someone overcoming. It's really the story of healing. At the end of the day, that's why we're on the planet. We come to the planet, we struggle and bumble, and we try and find our way home to our true selves. And if we have a connection with our higher power, with God, with Hashem, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that makes that journey much more likely, but no less difficult. So I looked inside one day and I said, okay, we got this whole story. Where do I hurt? Well, at the time, my wife and I were having trouble having children. We had tried every kind of in vitro. We had done, at one point, we actually were intimate even to try and have children. We did everything we could think of to have children. We'd gone, thank you, a little in the back of there. So eventually it turned out that wasn't going to be, even with the in vitro, and we thought, okay, well, I guess we'll have to adopt. So we started trying to do adoption, and thank God at some point we were blessed with a beautiful daughter. It was a long process. And then we went for years trying to adopt another child. And we actually tried to adopt our daughter's sibling, and then that didn't work out. The kids got onto drugs, and the baby was born at like 1 pound and 8 ounces, and they just disappeared. And we went through a whole bunch of terrible situations where it just wasn't working out. And then I remember we came back from Wichita from meeting this couple, and there was this like 6'7" Neanderthal guy with a knife on his belt whose girlfriend hadn't told them why we were there to adopt their baby who was due like on Wednesday. And I'm playing chess with this caveman who has a knife there, and we're just having small talk. And the girl, who clearly is doing drugs, won't sign the papers that are necessary for us to be there to take the baby on Wednesday. And we call our adoption attorney on Friday morning, and he says, "You have to come home." And we said, "But we don't have the baby yet. The baby's due Wednesday." He said, "You have to come home. She's not going to sign these papers. She just wants your money." And she already had a lot of our money. So we race to this little hotel near the airport because it's too late to get a flight. And we tell the people at the desk, "Don't tell anybody if someone comes looking for us," because they wanted more money. And we found out later that someone had come looking for us at about 2 in the morning. And thank God the desk didn't tell them they were. Shabbat ended. We got on a plane Saturday night. We flew home with an empty baby carrier with all these people on the plane going, "Where's the baby? Where's the baby?" My wife is destroyed. We get home, and I'm looking at this empty baby carrier and my wife in a rocking chair in our den, which was going to be a nursery. And I thought, we can't do this anymore. And we gave up. And about a year went by, and we started to think maybe we could try again. But we didn't say anything to anybody. We never called our adoption attorney. And we get a phone call, one Lag BaOmer. I don't know if you guys know about Lag. The rabbis keep adding holidays as you're getting involved in Judaism. It's like, "Oh, David, have you tried Tisha B'Av? Have you heard about there's extra 2 more days of Shavuos?" What's Shavuos? And Pesach, there's 6 more days. I thought at one point they were just making up holidays to see if I was loyal. "Dave, you should try Ufa for Fruf." How long is it? "It's 8 days in Israel, 12 days in Brazil, and 9 days here." Okay, I'm in. I am loyal to the tribe, right? They're making all this up. So it's Lag BaOmer. And we get this phone call from our Chabad rabbi, and he says, "David, I know you guys have been wanting babies. You should come to the Chabad picnic and daven for a baby." And I get this phone call like 10 in the morning it was Tuesday morning, and it was Wednesday morning. So I go, "Fine, I'll go." So my writing partner is sitting in the desk next to me in my office, and he says, "What was that all about?" And I said, "I'm going to go pray for a baby. It's a magical day for baby praying." And he said, "Well, good luck with that." So I go and I go to the picnic, and Mincha comes, and we daven Mincha, and then the sun goes down, and now it is Lag BaOmer. And I pray for a baby, and my wife prays for a baby. And I think back then they had fax machines. My wife and the Rebbitzin wrote a little note. They put it in a fax machine. You guys remember fax machines, right? So it was like the early text messaging. And it went to they took it to the Rebbe's Ohel, to the kever, and I guess they put it in there. Anyway, Thursday morning, in the middle of Lag BaOmer, about 10 a.m., my writing partner and I are writing away, and the phone rings. And a little voice on the other says, "Hello, Mr. Weiss? Yeah. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm here with my girlfriend, Sarah. We've been in L.A. for about 4 months, and we're due on Sunday morning. And the couple that we wanted was going to take our baby, they've decided they're not quite ready to adopt a baby. And so our attorney gave us 4 phone numbers, and nobody else is home except for you guys. And we had never told anybody we were back in the market." And my writing partner is listening to this, and his jaw just hits the floor. And I'm like, "Where are you?" "Oh, we're over in the valley." My wife and I jumped in the car. We had lunch with these people. It was a shidduch. Sunday morning, my son, Sammy, is born. I cut his umbilical cord, and he is in our house Sunday night as our son. Lag BaOmer. So I went to the pain. Oh, by the way, miracles piled on miracles. Our son's name is Sammy Weiss. 6 years later, Sammy's got dyslexia. He can't keep going to the Jewish day school we're at because he just can't keep the letters straight. And so we have to go to this special school, Park Century, which is a special, very expensive school for kids with dyslexia and other learning issues. We get there, and it turned out the name of the other couple, because they told us who they were working with that wasn't ready, it was Weiss. My name is Weiss. They told me the first name. I recognized the name. I'd never met the man, but he was the man who had done the legal work on my first job at Disney. He was a Disney lawyer. So I knew who he was. I hadn't met him, but I knew who he was. We get to this school, And there's this other couple named Weiss, whose name I recognize, with their son, who they adopted about 3 months after we adopted our son. And their son's name, Sammy Weiss. Come on! That class was very small because it was a class for kids with dyslexia. There's 6 kids in the class. 33.3% of them were Sammy Weiss. So this is the way God works. I'm sitting at the table before all that happens, saying my wife and I can't have kids. This is before my daughter's born. She was born during the Rugrats movie. So we're sitting there childless at this table, and I'm like, okay, Boris and Shlomo. Shlomo and Boris have been fighting because Boris has all these Rugrats in the TV show, his grandchildren. He's always bragging about them. Shlomo is this fancy pants businessman who's always bragging about his business. So the two of them get on stage to do the play, The Meaning of Hanukkah. And the king of the Greeks, Shlomo, is poking Boris in the chest as the Maccabee. You Jews have to dress like the Greeks. You have to act like the Greeks. You have to pray like the Greeks. And Boris throws down. That's it. I'm tired of all this poking. Always poking and poking me and bragging about your fancy businessman, Mr. Fancy Pants Businessman. And Shlomo says, well, of course I'm bragging about my business. You're always bragging about your children. And Boris says, well, you'd be bragging about your children too if you had any, but you're so busy making money with your fancy business. And Shlomo says, is that what you think? And Boris says, well, that's what you said. And Shlomo says, sue me, I lied. Me and my Sadie were never blessed with children. So I got no one to share our tradition with anyway. Here, you be king. And he walks off stage. And Boris is left there flabbergasted. He had no idea. And Shlomo wanders off stage and he's confronted by the Rugrats, who had known the only way to stop a meanie, is what they learned on the playground, you got to put them down for a nap. The only way to get them to go to sleep, there's a meanie on the playground, the teacher makes them take a nap, Chucky, and then we just read them a book, they'll go to sleep. So they lift up the book. What is it? It's the story of Hanukkah. And Boris comes over to make amends with his brother Shlomo, who he didn't realize had been in such pain for so long, and says, they want you to read the book? And Shlomo says, I'm not a people person. He says, but they want you to read it. And he sits down and he shares his tradition with his long rival's grandchildren and thus passes on the Jewish tradition this way. And that's the story of the Rugrats Hanukkah, which came out of A, the story of Hanukkah, and B, the wisdom that some rabbi gave me and a therapist at some point and my beloved brother, go towards the pain. We run from the pain. We just want to shut it down. We don't want to think about it. We just, that hurts, I'm not going to look at that. But the truth is, as long as we run away from the pain festers. The pain is a gift. God gave us pain so we don't put our fingers on the grill and just leave them there till we're smoking. The pain is the beginning of healing. So that's going to be my first Torah idea for you, is A, I was able to take the Hanukkah story and put it in the Rugrats, but B, you can take this in your own life. You don't have to be a writer to use that. It was very healing for me to be able to write about that. But just in your own life, if you take the time, whenever you're stuck in any part of your life and go, okay, where do I hurt? And where is that pain? Where do I feel it? What does it feel like? That will be the beginning of healing. Second story, Shrek 2. So thank God, after we did the Rugrats, that got us hooked up at Nickelodeon. We did Rugrats TV shows. We did the Mother's Day. That was the one that got nominated for the Primetime Emmy. We did Rugrats in Paris, the movie. And then that led to Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, which got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Picture. And Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius caught the attention of the producers of Shrek, who were looking for new writers because after the first movie, the first writers decided they didn't want to do the story the director wanted to do, and so they went separate ways. You don't have to worry about those guys. They did okay. They went off and wrote the Pirates of the Caribbean. So now they need new writers. We get this interview. We go in, we meet with the producers of Shrek, and we pitch a couple things that they like. Namely, we knew the ending. They said, we got this king. We don't know what his story is, and he's got some secret that the fairy godmother's using. I said, I'll tell you a secret. He's a frog. And he doesn't want anyone to find out that he's really just a frog. He's afraid no one will love him if he's a frog. So he's gone through all this machinations to keep his real identity hidden. Well, there's a Jewish idea. So many of us want to assimilate and not be noticed. And the machinations that he goes through to hide his true identity causes everybody around him untold amounts of pain, especially himself. And by the end of that movie, he comes out as a frog. And his beautiful bride, Julie Andrews, who I adore, who is managed by my camp counselor from Camp Hess Kramer when I went in 8th grade, who was teaching the media class and introduced me to my first opportunity to use multimedia. He had hair down to here, and I went to this screening of Shrek 2. They had a DVD party, and there was Julie Andrews, and I wanted to meet her. And they said, well, you know, Julie's sitting at this fancy table with Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy and Jeffrey Katzenberg, and if you want to meet them, you have to kind of stand here and get cleared by security. Even, I'm the writer of the movie, but there's levels in Hollywood, right? So they send over this guy with super short hair, and they go, hey, well, and he goes, what's going on? He's checking. He wants to make sure I'm not a crazy man that's going to try and kiss her or cut her hair, you know, that kind of thing. So we're talking. He gives me his name. His name is Sauer. And I'm like, oh, you related to Rabbi Sauer? And he goes, no, I'm Steve Sauer. I said, Steve Sauer? I said, wait a second. Did you ever work at Camp Hess Kramer? He said, yeah, I was the media director. I said, you taught me how to use slideshows to do a multi-projector dissolve unit. This guy had got me started in the business. And the next thing you know, I have these fantastic pictures of me and Julie Andrews on my phone now. So Julie looks at the frog and says, I was afraid you wouldn't love me. And she says, oh, you know, I could never not love you. I mean, she was perfectly happy to be in love with this frog. You have to be who you are. That's a nice little story. But that's not the story I want to tell you. The story I want to tell you, even though I just told you that story, is we had the same problem on Shrek 2. We knew that it was Meet the Parents, right? We got the job based on that. My writing partner pitched the giant cookie dough monster, who becomes this giant gingerbread monster who's going to storm the castle at the end of the movie. But we didn't have the theme. We knew it was Meet the Parents. The director told us he wanted to do that. Shrek has married Fiona, and instead of turning into a princess, now she's an ogre. And his parents are not happy about that when they show up, you know, after they get married. And so we knew all that. But what's the theme? What's the message? So we're stuck on that. So we go to Jeffrey Katzenberg and we pitch, hey, how about this? How about marriage is hard? Because now when millions of people go to see the movie and they say, gosh, look, Shrek and Fiona have to work at their marriage. Maybe we're not doing so bad. And it'll give them hope and they'll stick with it. And Jeffrey Katzenberg says, are you kidding me? Actually, he threw a couple of other colorful words in there. Are you kidding me? Marriage is hard. Do you think people are going to pay $15 to go and see a story about how hard marriage is? The reason they're going to the movie is to forget how hard their marriage is. And he throws us out of his office with some more colorful language. So we go and I have coffee with the director. My writing partner goes to play video games because he's depressed. And the director's writing partner, he went for, I don't know, to get a drink or something. And I'm sitting there with the director, and I remembered something I had learned when I first started going to synagogue. And when I first started going, everything was brand new. And we had a Rabbi Goldberg, who runs Yeshiva Or Eliyahu in Los Angeles. But at the time, he was just the new rabbi at this little shul at PJC, the Pacific Jewish Center on Venice, on the boardwalk in Los Angeles. And he's brought down this wonderful definition of love. I mentioned this last night for anybody who was there. And he gave us this definition from Rabbi Orlowek in Jerusalem. Does anybody here have a definition of love that they like that isn't the one I'm about to give? Is anybody here married? Okay. What do you got? Oh, no, you can't say that. That's mine. He's out. Okay. You keep thinking about it. Anyone else? So putting the other person's interests first, that's nice. I would say that that's too self-deprecating because then where are you? Are you really their servant? Is that God put you on this earth to be someone else's? It's good, but I think it'll be hard in the long run to keep that going. Connection, that I can get with a phone, which isn't marriage. I have the same problem with that. Being for them what they need you to be, not what you want to be for them. Again, I feel like now you're a chameleon instead of a husband. But again, these are good, and maybe they're even better than mine. But mine is from Rabbi Orlowek, who is a fancy rabbi in Jerusalem. Okay, you like that, so we'll use that one. I mentioned last night, someone said, oh, love means unconditional giving. I said, no, that's the definition of bankruptcy. Right? Someone else pitched, oh, love means never having to say you're sorry. You remember that one? Yeah, that's the definition of divorce. Yeah. So Rabbi Orlowek says that love means what's important to you is important to me. Now, see, that's just where you were going. But you well, it's not mine. I can't take credit for it. I would have said love was give me your cake. That's what I thought love meant. But here's where this one goes. Yours takes the other person further into diminishing themselves. I'm not saying that you're more important. I'm saying that what's important to you is important to me. Now, that sounds like a cliche, but I'll tell you right now, this is so hard to do. And he explained it. It sounds easy. Oh, yeah, it's a little aphorism. Oh, yeah. No. Try this at home and see what it is. Look, if you're talking about me, I'm fascinated. If you're talking about things that I care about them. But if you're talking about things that I don't care about, I don't care. But if I care about you, maybe I should care. It doesn't mean I'm going to do what you say. It doesn't mean I'm going to put you first. It simply means that what you care about is important to me. He said that's the definition of love. And I'll tell you, if you can just do that, your relationship will be improved 100-fold. I'll give you an example. Before I heard this, my wife would come to me and she'd say, "Oh, honey, the cleaning lady used the wrong soap in the dishwasher. Now the glass with the little streaks. I had to get out the little rag to take out the glass with the streaks, and then I may be late to take our son to the orthodontist." She doesn't actually talk like that, but that's what it sounds like to me when she's talking about the dishwasher, right? I don't care. I don't care. That's why we have a cleaning lady, so I don't have to think about the dishes in the dishwasher. She can see. I don't say any of those things. I'm not a complete idiot. I'm an idiot in progress, right? But she can look at my eyes and she can see he doesn't care. And she doesn't actually care about the glasses and the streaks. What she really cares about is whether or not I care. And her face falls. And I'm a man. And a man wants a woman to dig him. I want her to think I'm the dude. I'm the man who slays the kosher dragon. I'm her hero. And her face falls, and now I'm a failure because I have failed my wife. And that's like the worst place to be. And then men, because they have, the same rabbi said that men, definition of a man, big ego, fragile ego. I'm like, oh man, how can she say that I failed her? She didn't actually say it, but that's how I feel. Now I'm angry about that. That's unfair. And I go off looking for a job, and I'm all, ah. And people can see the energy that I have. And I don't get the job because I'm carrying this horrible energy because I didn't listen to the story about the glasses in the dishwasher. So I hear this story about love means what's important to you is important to me. And I get another chance. She comes to me one day after that and says, "Oh, honey, the cleaning lady used the wrong soap on the floor. She shouldn't use the Murphy wood oil soap. Instead, she used the other kind of soap. And now there's streaks on the floor. They get the Swiffer and the Swiffer." And I'm like, oh my God, not the Swiffer. But I remember. I go, wait a second. Okay, hang on. I can do this. Gosh, honey, that must be really upsetting. And she's like, who's this, right? But I can see that it's working, right? So I keep going with it. Oh yeah, God, I'm so sorry that happened. And she's like, now she knows I'm faking. She's not an idiot, but she thinks it's cute that I'm trying. Oh, he's trying. Oh, he's trying. And I mistake that for, she digs me. Ha-ha! And I go off looking for the gig with this new stride in my step, and I get the job because I cared about the Murphy's Wood Oil Soap and the Swiffer. What a difference. I get this right about 4 times a year. Next year, I'm going to get it 5 times. And each year, I'm going to double it. And my wife sometimes even will joke and say, "You didn't go on this trip and tell the story about the Swiffer, did you? Because you're still terrible at that." I know, honey, but I'm trying. And she loves me for trying, right? This is super hard Herculean work. But this is, if you want to be someone who loves, we have to work at it. We have to work at being a good person. If you think so, you're going to be a great basketball player. Everybody knows what you have to do. You have to play basketball 10 hours a day and shoot a zillion hoops, free throws by the time you're 12. And if you want to be a tennis player, you got to play tennis 80 zillion hours. If you want to be a surgeon, you got to go to med school. Everything, you got to be an expert at something. You got to work at. Everyone gets that. To be a loving person, what, you're just going to click on Game of Thrones and have a beer and you're just going to get off the couch a loving person? We got to work at it. So I tell this story to Andrew Adamson, the director of Shrek 2. And Adam's like, "Oh, that's interesting." Adam was from New Zealand. He was married about the same amount of years I was married and was having some of the same adventures I was having. And he liked it. And very quietly, the two of us started writing in that direction. We never said a word to anybody except the other writers. I don't think we even pitched it back to Jeffrey. We might have. We just started working in that direction. It never became the official mantra. But if you go back and watch Shrek 2, and I don't get residuals for Shrek 2 because it's animated. We didn't get that covered in the strike, even though we tried. So I'm not pitching it for that reason. But if you go back and watch that movie, everything that Shrek does is aimed at figuring out what's important to Fiona. So much so that when the king, her father, shows up at like 3 a.m. to ask Shrek to go hunting so that he can take him out into the woods and get him lost and then plant Puss in Boots out there to kill him, Shrek is stuck. Because what does the king do? He knocks on the door. It's John Cleese. And he says, "Hello, Shrek. I was wondering if you'd like to go hunting." And Shrek looks at John Cleese, who he knows wants to kill him. And he says, "No, I don't want to go hunting with you." And the king is a genius. He looks over Shrek's shoulder, and there sleeping in the bed is his beautiful bride, Fiona. And the king says, "It would mean a lot to Fiona." Cut to Shrek out in the woods at 3 o'clock in the morning with Donkey looking for whatever they're hunting for, and out jumps Puss in Boots, and it's on. The rest of the movie is Shrek trying to figure out what's important. He takes the potion, everything he's doing is to try and figure out what's important to Fiona. And that movie really made our career, cemented our career as writers. And that idea that made it happen, that got us through, was an idea that came from Jerusalem, from Rabbi Noah Orlowick, who is an educator and a family guru, via Rabbi Goldberg at the Pacific Jewish Center as we were first coming back into Judaism. So that's idea 2. Idea 3, the Smurfs. La 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 la. Anybody know that song? It sounds like a little Jewish nagoon, I guess. Here, let me see if you can do that for us. Can you do it? La 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 la. La 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 la. Everybody, no, it's okay. So we got this job doing the Smurfs, and I will point out that Smurfs is actually technically a live-action movie, so it was covered by the Writers Guild, and did have residuals in health and pension, and that's why until my son blew up the engine, my beautiful Volvo C70 was Smurf blue. And the front door of our house is blue because there were residual checks to help pay that. But so same thing, we needed a theme for Smurfs too. And this idea comes, if you watch the Smurfs movie, which now I am plugging it because I do get residuals, the first movie, the second movie also has some beautiful Jewish ideas in it about where Smurfette came from, because that's a movie really of her origin. And you find out she goes on this whole journey, and the punchline is something that, again, I heard from my rabbi, which was, it really isn't how you're created, it's who you choose to be. Right? Which is it's a beautiful notion. It's not who you are, it's who you choose to be. And so much so that the rabbis actually say that you can define yourself by the path you set foot on. The person who is a Baal Tshuva, think about what that is. What does that mean? Baal Tshuva. Master of the return. You get called a Baal Tshuva the day that you start on the road. How can you be the master? Because our rabbis have the wisdom to know that the road you're on is who you're going to be. Which is why you have to be careful what road you get on. Because if you get on a dark road, guess what? On day 1, you're the master of that darkness. Thank the Lord you could get off that road every morning, every hour. You can just step off that road, turn around, and get on the right road and be the master of that. It's a beautiful thing about Judaism. God is a very clever fellow. So we're working on Smurfs, same issue. We need the theme. What is it about? And I remembered a very wonderful thing. If you watch Smurfs, here's what happens. There's a Smurf called Clumsy Smurf, and I was drawn to him. That was my pitch. You got to figure, whose story are we telling? And we were telling Clumsy's story because we all feel clumsy in a way. Each of us, in a way, feels as though we're not quite enough. We're bumping into it. We're stumbling over it. We're bumping into the people around us. So I loved Clumsy because I related to him. So here's Clumsy's story, is that Papa has a vision. And Papa Smurf, for those of you who don't know, is this long-bearded, he's the Chabad Rebbe of the Smurfs, right? And he has these visions. And when he has a vision, that's the truth. That's what's going to happen. And at the beginning of the movie, he has a vision where Clumsy is in the middle of this horrible attack where the villain, Gargamel, comes. And Gargamel has this horrible magic wand, and he's zapping all the Smurfs to get their essence. They're all getting swirled around in a hurricane and thrown into these horrible cages where he's going to extract their essence. It's a disaster. And Clumsy drops this magic wand when he has a chance to take it. And as a result, the Smurfs are led to their destruction. Horrible vision. And when it's over, Papa Smurf says, okay, guys, whatever happens, we got to keep Clumsy out of the action. Keep him away from the action. So the whole movie, poor Clumsy is shunted aside and feels left out and is sad. He bonds with Jayma Mays from Glee, and they become very good friends, and she's very kind to him. But at the end of the movie, oh no, guess what happens? Clumsy, sure enough, is going to catch the wand. You can actually find this on YouTube, so you don't have to pay for it. But he And it's all up to him because he's the only one that's right there when the wand falls out of the hands of the villain. And he dives for it, and everybody's like, oh, no. You just know this is the end of it. And he's flying through the air, and it comes, and he drops it, and it goes. But then he falls because he's clumsy, and it lands on him. And he has it. And he zaps the villain. And the villain goes flying off and gets hit by a bus. And then his cat, who several times the villain would toss the cat in to test things out, and he would say, "Are you dead?" And then the cat would be okay. After the villain gets hit by the bus and goes driving away, the cat shows up on a park bench and goes, "Meow." And the subtitles say, "Are you dead?" So at the end of all that, Papa Smurf comes to Clumsy and he says, "Clumsy, I owe you an apology." And he says, "Why, Papa Smurf?" And he says, "Because I believed in a vision more than I believed in you. I believed in this vision more than I believed in you." And where did that come from? So it turns out we borrowed that from one of my favorite little Shabbat stories. We're telling this to our kids. So our rabbis tell us that in a very mystical, lovey way, on Shabbat, Friday night, 2 angels come to our house. Do people know this story? Right? The 2 angels. What kind of angel comes? A good angel and a bad angel. An evil angel and a good angel. They come to our house for Shabbat. And when they get there, if they find the place in disarray, the father's not helping and the kids are being disruptive and the poor mom is doing it all by herself and the table's not set, then guess what? The bad angel gets to say, "May it be like this next week." And the good angel has to say, "Amen." But if they show up and the table is set and the father is helping and the kids are getting along and they're helping and the mom feels supported and it's going to be a beautiful Shabbos, then the bad angel has to say, "May it be like this next week." And the good angel gets to say, "May it be like this next week." And the bad angel has to say, "Amen." So on this story, the rabbis ask a famous question. How does it ever change? How does it ever change? If you get that bracha from an angel and the other angel said amen, how does it change during the week? And for that, they draw from the blessing of Abraham. What do we hear about Abraham? We're told that you will be more, we think of it as your descendants will be more numerous than the stars. Right? And we know that's not true. The Jews, we're not more numerous than anybody. We're like one of the fewest people on the planet. Another way to read more numerous is above, greater than, beyond. So how is it that we're beyond the stars? Well, what were the stars back in the days of Abraham? Your destiny. Everything was set under the stars. Your zodiac, the sign of the zodiac. If you were born clumsy, then you're destined to be clumsy. And we've had this until only recently. In India and England, the caste system, if you were born poor, even if you got money somehow, you were still lower than everyone else. It was just destiny ruled. And the Jews were the first people to get permission to change that because God himself came down and said, "No more will the stars rule your destiny. No more do you get up in the morning and say, whatever I did last week, that's what I'm stuck doing this week. If I was a mess up last week, I failed my husband, I failed my wife, I failed my children, I failed my students, I failed my friends." Okay, that was yesterday. Today, you're allowed to change your destiny because we are above the stars. And we wanted to teach that lesson to who? Papa Smurf. The Rebbe himself needed to learn the lesson. And he was taught it by the lowliest of the Smurfs, Clumsy. And we wanted to bring that message to be able to tell all of our audiences who are now, as David Putnam said, watching dream-sized images. We wanted to put into the subconscious of our audience, you can change your destiny. You can lift yourself above the stars. In a very practical way, you can do that with little tiny steps. It's not like you wake up and go, "I'm going to change my destiny." That's too much. No, a little tiny step. A little tiny step. I'm going to take a class. And I tell people, if you're not doing anything Jewishly, I'm going to talk to kids on Friday, I speak to college students. If you're not doing anything Jewishly, do me a favor. On Friday night before you go to the movies, light a candle. If you're already lighting a candle, then do me a favor. Light a second candle. Go to a better movie. If you're not taking any classes, take a class. If you're going to synagogue 3 times a year, go 4 times. You see where I'm going? And by taking that little step each day, a little step, I tell people, I started out as a Reformed Jew who became a born-again Christian and then slowly started adding, I was going to church and to synagogue together Fridays and Saturdays. I was doing both for a couple years. I didn't know what I was believing, right? At some point, the Judaism started making more and more sense, so we stopped going to church. Besides that, it was just too exhausting. You go to church all day Sunday and synagogue all day Saturday. It's like, when do you go to Costco? I mean, something had to give. So, but then we started adding more things. So my wife made the kitchen kosher, and then we added keeping kosher out of the house. And then the rabbi says, and then she finished a conversion, and then we got married without a chuppah. I mean, with a chuppah. The first time was with a chuppah and a Jews for Jesus rabbi. So the second in a Presbyterian church. So we got rid of the Presbyterian church and the Jews for Jesus rabbi. We kept the chuppah, and now I'm here, in Palm Desert with you guys, with a kippah and my tzitzis and 2 Jewish children. My son just got back from a year in Israel, and you can change your destiny. And if you ask me how I did it, if you'd have said I was going to be here, you told me that 24 years ago when I first got married in the church, I'd have said you're out of your mind. And I would have been right because none of those things ever happened. What happened was I took a step, and then I took another step, and then I took a step back because I got afraid, and then I took another step. And if you take enough steps, one little step at a time, there's no limit to where you can get to. And that would be my bracha to you, is that you learn from the lesson of the Smurfs that you are in charge of your destiny, and that you think about while you're at this conference, because this is the best time, what step can you take to take your next step down your journey? I said last night, why do we have one God? There's many reasons, but if you think about it, it's kind of random. There must only be one God. 6, 8, 12 gods, why do I care as long as they get the job done? No. He said there's only one God. The other thing is, if you have a whole bunch of zeros and we all feel like zeros, and there's a billion, gazillion zeros, an infinity of zeros, guess what you got? 0. But you put echad in front of those zeros? That was my whole thing. As a kid, I felt a little bit like a zero, so I got into show business so I'd feel like I was somebody. Didn't work. Take on echad. Is that my 5 minutes? Oh, you're just sneezing. God bless you. You put a 1 in front of an infinity of zeros, and you've got infinity and beyond. Our God is that God that turns zeros into infinity. And our God is the God of the one step that you take. So my bracha to you, if I may be so bold, is while you're here at this retreat, take some time in the evening before you go to bed, before you're headed to the pillow. Think about what your step could be. Just the next step, your little step you're going to take. And make it a small enough step that you can be consistent with it. Don't take a huge step. Tell people if you're not doing Friday night dinners at your house, try doing Friday night dinners twice a year, once a month. Whatever, if you're doing it now and then during the month, then do it. Then you can start saying, okay, Friday night we're going to do dinners. Pick a step that you can take. If you don't know what your step is at all, then do me a favor. Sit down with one of these wonderful rabbis that are at this conference, or pick your favorite teacher and say, hey, I heard this thing about taking a step, and I want to take one, but I don't know what it is. Can you help me figure it out? I guarantee you they'll be willing to do it. Figure it out. Change your destiny. Thanks for coming.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most sought-after Jewish speakers, teachers, and thinkers.